All right, so now we are going to do our exercise on postMessage based off what we learned in the presentation previously. So suppose we are a company, X.com, that specializes in authenticating users so that no credentials ever touch a merchant server. And we choose to develop our login page so that Y.com, the merchant, can use an iframe to pull in our site, have the user enter their credentials, and then message back to the merchant site that the login was successful. We also want to be able to send through an email address to pre-populate our login form. So at a high level, how can we make a solution that would work for this merchant using iframes and messaging? So what would the structure of the application look like? So if you think of a basic HTML application, we would have Y.com would have some sort of a login page that has an iframe, and then that iframe would actually pull in the page from X.com. So we would only have the HTML file on Y.com, not the actual login portion. So how would we pre-populate the email address on X.com's iframe? So we would structure it so that X.com listens for a post message from Y.com with some sort of a type of email. Y.com would then send a post message to X.com containing the email address that we want to pre-populate. X.com pre-populates the email address into the login form, and then X.com post messages back to the parent that the email was received. All right, so how would we implement the actual login portion? We'd have Y.com listens for a post message with a type of on login. And then when the login button is clicked on the X.com iframe, X.com would run through their login process and send a post message back to Y.com with the user information. So then at that point, Y.com would probably hide the login container with the X.com iframe and display the actual user's information that was sent back to it. So that's what we're going to do in our exercise. We're going to go ahead and use the client post message folder for this exercise and then complete the parts in order. There are additional comments that are included in the code to help you out throughout the exercise. So the exercise is 4 parts. We'll go through each part and pause and stop and go over the actual answer for each part. So we're going to start with the login.html file. We're going to send the email message variable to the iframe. Then we're going to go to our login.html, create an event listener to receive messages. Then we're going to go to our login.html and send the login message to the parent. And then we're also going to create an event listener to receive messages on the login.html page. So to start this off, locate part 1 in the login.html file, and then go ahead and pause this video and take a few minutes to try and solve this part on your own. You can follow the inline comments to complete this exercise. All right, if you haven't already paused this video, please do it now because I'm about to go over the actual answer to the exercise. So if we open up the login.html page on our training application, which is under client post message login.html, the first section here, you can see this is actually in the iframe.onload. We have to do this because we cannot call post message until the iframe has loaded. So we are going to send the email message variable to the iframe. So we must use the postMessage function on the content window property of the iframe variable. So right off the bat, I know that we want to use content window on the iframe variable. So iframe.content window.postMessage. All right, so now I want to send the email message variable as a string. So I should use json.stringify to stringify the object first, and then I'm passing it email message, and I'm setting my domain to star. And I'm just going to save that. And return to our presentation here. And you'll see that that is how the first part of the exercise is solved. Now we're going to move on to the second part of the exercise, which is listening for messages on the child. So we want to locate part 2 in the rlogin.html file, and we want to pause the video and take a couple minutes to try and solve this part on your own. Follow the inline comments to complete. All right, if you haven't already done so, please pause the video now because I am about to go through the answers for the second part of this exercise. All right, so I'm going to switch over to our training application, and we're going to edit the postMessage rlogin.html file. Find part 2. It says create an event listener to receive the email message. So from the documents at Mozilla, we know that that is window.add event listener. We know that we are listening for the message, which is postMessage. We have a callback function that receives an event. All right, then it says parse the event's data property from a string to an object and store it in a variable called data. We'll say var data equals json.parse event.data. It says check the data's variable, the type property. So we're going to say if data.type equals email, then I'm going to set the example input email DOM ID to the data variable's message property. So we're going to say document.get element by ID, example input 1, dot value equals data.message. Then call the post message on the parent window, which is window.parent, to send a confirmation message back to the parent. Let's say window.parent.postMessage, and we are going to json.stringify, and the domain is star. And then we're going to stringify an object with a type of email. All right, and that should do it for part 2. I'm just going to save it. And then if I go back and refresh my example application page for postMessage login, I should see that sending email message is now populated, and we see that test@awesome.com, which is the email that we sent across, is now populated. All right. So that's it for part 2. And here is the answer. that we created. So you can pause and take a minute to type that in if you need to. Otherwise, we will now move on to the third part of this exercise. Sending the login message. So we'll locate part 3 in our login.html file. And we're going to pause this video and take a couple minutes and try and solve this part on your own. Follow the inline comments on the actual code to complete. Alright, if you have not yet paused this video, please do so now because I'm about to go over the answer. So I am going to open up our HTML file, our login.html. Alright, here's part 3. It says send the login message to the parent window. Call postMessage on the parent window, which is window.parent. So we know that I'm going to do window.parent.postMessage. It says send login message as a string, so we're going to stringify that. Login message, and then use star as the domain. Alright, I'm going to save that. And that should be it for part 3. And you'll see that the actual answer, we're just window.parent.postMessage and stringifying the login message. So the fourth and final part of this exercise is listen for messages. So we're going to locate part 4 in the login.html file, and then go ahead and pause this video and take a couple minutes to try and solve this part on your own. Follow the inline comments to complete this exercise. So if you haven't done so, please pause the video now because I'm about to go through the actual answers for this exercise. Alright, so I'm going to open up our my HTML file. We'll open the login.html, find part 4. It says create a window event listener for message. So once again, just like the documentation we saw for postMessage, we're going to say window.add event listener, give it a type of message, and that takes a callback function with an event. Alright, so now we're going to call json.parse and parse the event data into a new variable called data. So var data equals json.parse, and we're parsing event.data. Then it says call the handle message function with the data variable. That's easy enough. We'll just do handle message data. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. All right, so we now should be able to refresh our login.html page. We should be able to submit the form and see the following output. Make sure that we see a sending email message, received email message, received on login message, and we should also see the email that we actually logged in with. So let's go ahead and try that out. I'm going to refresh. So we already see sending email message, and we already received the email message. We see that the email is pre-populated. I'm just going to add some password in here. Click the submit button. See a little spinner. And then after that, we see received logon message, and we see the email that we placed in the login form. All right. right, so in conclusion, um, in the real world, this task is much more complex than our example. Some additional things that we would have to think about. Since add event listener listens for all event messages, we would have to have that type property and check it every single time. So any sort of different type of message that we would send, we would have to add on to our if else. Um, and that would be for every single type of message we want to send. We'd also want to narrow it down to our domain, as any other script that does post message would be coming through into our event listener, since it's only one event listener called message. So there'd be conflicts there. Also for security, you would have to check the origin every time. And in typical situations, you're going to have 4 parts for every post message integration. Since you would both send and receive messages on both the child and parent. So how could we implement the logout button that we saw using post message? In order to do that, we would have to, after we got the message for the on click or for the on login message, we would set an on click event on the logout button that would then message back to the iframe to log the user out and then send a confirmation back. We actually have to do this as a message because the iframe is setting a cookie to keep the user logged in, and the only way to remove that cookie is for the iframe's domain to actually remove it. So luckily for us, there's a library that does make post messaging easier. It's actually a PayPal developed library, and it's something that we'll go over in the next section.